remote and unexplored places, legendary lost cities just waiting to be rediscovered. Hugh McCarthy was brought up on a diet of stories of epic British explorations. Men who had adventure in their blood, gone where others fed to tread. Livingstone, Shackleton, Scott. Top of McCarthy's list was Englishman Percy Fawcett. His epic search for the legendary lost city he simply called Zed, the granddaddy of all tales, combining untrodden Brazilian lands with the allure of finding an abandoned city enveloped by the jungle. With it the possibility of wealth. A city like El Dorado, rumoured to be made of gold, certain fame. The last time anyone ever heard of Fawcett was in May 1925. The notion of it being he who would discover his fate, and for good measure the lost city as well, became his lifelong obsession. McCarthy consumed everything he could to aid his dream. Studied Portuguese, tramped in New Zealand bush, learnt navigation skills, read books on survival, in preparation for his own solo adventure. In 1947, aged 31, he dumped his teacher's job and left New Zealand for the wilds of Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso was aptly named by the Portuguese. Thick bush, the Brazilian jumping point for past and present explorers of the jungle interior. The legend of the lost city still attracted many adventurers. Along with them, a fair few romantic dreamers. One of those was Stefan Ratton from Switzerland. He came out of Mato Grosso and contacted the British Embassy with the claim he had met Percy Fawcett. Percy begged Ratton to tell authorities he was alive and been held captive and to come rescue him. By the time Ratton was telling his tale, it was 7 years after Percy Fawcett and his two companions, one his son, disappeared. It was also 6 months after Ratton had originally said he had spoken to Fawcett. Despite the unlikelihood of this being any more than an imaginative story to ply money into his main profession, trapping, Fawcett's wife and supporters funded Ratton's rescue venture. Ratton and his two companions went off into the jungle and were never seen again. All three were experienced bushmen. Here was McCarthy, a teacher from Timaru, who had zero experience with South American rivers and jungles. There was and is a vast difference from Fiordland in New Zealand and the jungles of South America. The last piece of relative civilization for McCarthy was a small village at the edge of the largely unmapped eastern area of Mato Grosso. There he met and was befriended by a missionary, Jonathan Wells. McCarthy wasn't the first romantic adventurer to pass through the village and die a miserable lonely death in the jungle, either through starvation, disease, or at the hands of hostile Indians. Wells knew McCarthy gravely underestimated the dangers. To travel solo without a guide was almost certain death. McCarthy could not be convinced of the perils he now faced, though. His lifelong dream was now within striking distance. Wells was, however, able to persuade McCarthy to take one provision with him. Call it a safety net. Carrier pigeons. When McCarthy disappeared down the river in his canoe, he did so with 7 wicker baskets. McCarthy's first pigeon reached Wells 6 weeks later. The letter was numbered 3. The first 2 pigeons clearly having failed in their missions to deliver reports back to Wells. The third one he did get read, He talks here about having an accident, but is clearly alive and kicking. Frustratingly, the 4th letter never reached Wells either. 6 weeks later, the 5th pigeon did arrive at the mission. It wasn't looking good for poor Hugh. Another 3 weeks passed, and the 7th and last pigeon arrived. Well was astounded at what he read. Wells had gotten to know McCarthy well. He didn't dismiss any of the 3 letters to be the ramblings of a delirious man. Instead, he chartered a plane and encouraged authorities to organise a search. The chances of finding McCarthy were a needle in haystack stuff. By now, he would almost certainly be dead. If only that 6th letter detailing his position had have been received. Then perhaps we could have learnt more of the area he was referring to. History can be a fickle thing. Hugh McCarthy is now all but forgotten. Even after contacting his old school, the Timaru library, I failed to even locate a photo of him. There are 10 lines in books here, 5 lines in books there. Nothing substantial. McCarthy's heroic attempts are on the same scale of those of Fawcett, in some ways greater. He was vastly ill-prepared and unfunded. Went it alone. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube cataloguing epic and tragic journeys of lost explorers. This is the first on Hugh McCarthy. I truly hope this video sparks someone into writing a book on McCarthy's life and his 1947 journey into the Brazilian jungles. I, for one, would certainly buy it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.